So the Maharashtrian town of Nasik in 1929 was a favorite resort for residents of Bombay due to its equable climate. It was also considered a holy place for Hindus because of its position on the banks of the sacred Godavari River. Hundreds of families of Brahmin priests resided there, about whom Baba once commented, Nasik, being a place of pilgrimage, has thousands of sadhus coming daily. Residing here are mostly Brahmins who are very proud of living in such a holy place. They think of themselves as being something great, having been born in Nasik. Now, Nasikites would have another reason for being proud of their birthplace, as it was here that the women Mandali of the avatar of the age lived for 5 years, longer than at any other place besides Meherabad and Meherzad. For more than a year, the 6 women lived in strict seclusion in Gole's bungalow, a small whitewashed house known as Kabutar Khana, the pigeon house. Rustum, Franey, and their children occupied a house in the same compound, which was divided down the middle, the other half being occupied by their Brahmin landlady and her family. Next door was the Sarosh Motor Works garage, owned by Rustum, where many of the men Mandali later stayed and worked. The pigeon house had 2 well-built rooms with a bathing room, plus a kitchen that was separate from the main house. Daulat Mai was a wonderful cook, and she and Naja cooked for the women and for Rustum's family. Although the women were no longer living at Meherabad and were now in a metropolitan setting, it did not matter. They never ventured out of the compound and only left the house when going through a mango grove to the toilet. Masaji, who did the women's grocery shopping and saw to their needs, had a small room in the compound. Baba was not with us much in Nasik, Mehra recalled. Indeed, after moving to Nasik, they were taken to Meherabad only once, at the end of January, and most likely left after Baba's birthday. They did not see Baba again until more than a month later, when he came to Nasik on 30 March 1929 for just 2 days. 3 weeks after this, he came again on 22 April for a few days, and then not until 9 May, to bid them farewell before traveling to Rishikesh. Baba returned to Nasik from North India a month later and spent another 2 days with the women. Before arriving in Nasik, Baba usually sent a telegram saying that he would be coming on a particular date at a specific time with 5 or 6 people. Daulat Mai, Mehra, and Naja prepared dal and 1 vegetable for that many and kept it ready. Once, however, Baba cabled that he would come at 11 a.m. and he came at 10:30. Moreover, word came inside to Daulat Mai that he had brought more than 10 persons.
Wow.
When Baba came to their quarters, Daulat Mai quoted a Gujarati saying, quote, "The village patil, or headman, says to his wife that 3 guests are coming for dinner, but 13 came instead. So dear, just add more water to the dal." Baba laughed, but since there was no time to cook more, they did just that. They removed Baba's share of the already cooked dal and added water to the rest. A little butter and salt were put in to make it tasty and disguise the fact that it had been thinned. Other visitors to Nasik at this time were Gulmai and her daughter Dolly, who stayed a few days but returned to Ahmednagar on 22 June. Baba told Dolly to remain in Kushu quarters and to visit him in Meherabad, along with her brother Adi Sr. Later, she was permitted to join the group in Nasik, whereas Gulmai would come and go. Baba was back in Nasik at the end of June for 2 days, and again on 10 July, when he took the women to visit the Pandulina caves outside the city. The outing was a rare treat. Since moving to Nasik in January, they had never gone out, even for walks in the compound. Baba also informed them of his upcoming bus trip to Kashmir. The sidebar says the Pandulina caves are ancient Buddhist caves cut into a hillock that overlooks the city, with images of Buddha carved in some of them. Baba indicated that other masters and their disciples had occupied them also. Traveling about in a bus with the Mandali was another theme that was to gain prominence in later years, and Baba instructed that a bus be built to his specifications. He commented, "As you are aware, all my movements, and such journeys in particular, have some significance. This journey may be compared to a personal inspection tour of state by a king to see how his work is progressing at different places." In the meantime, Baba told the women to put on a play for him when he returned, another activity that was to occupy them in the coming years. The plays often mirrored issues with which Baba was concerned at the time. For this first play, he dictated the script, and the songs were also selected and given to the women. It was very entertaining and amusing, Mehera recalled, not in a serious vein. The play was about Krishna, Radha, and the gopis. In it, Krishna stops the gopis on the road as they are going to sell their milk by jumping out from behind a tree and holding on to their saris so they cannot go further. Not knowing that he is the avatar, they demand, "Who are you to trouble us?" "I want milk and curd from you," Krishna says, and makes them give it to him. Baba explained that Krishna behaved in this way so that the gopis would have the chance to serve the avatar, and subsequently they became his disciples. Since they had good voices, Mani, who was visiting, played Krishna, and Khorshid played Radha. Khorshid was slim and good looking in those days, said Mehera, who remembered also that the girls wore lovely owadnis, scarves, in the play, but did not remember what part she played. After returning from Kashmir on 26 August, Baba saw the play. He stayed in Nasik for only 2 days before going on to Meherabad. This time, he gave the women the theme for another play about a real sadhu and a false one. Pilamai, also visiting, played the false sadhu, while Gulmai took the part of the genuine one. Mehera, Khorshid, and perhaps Mani played Gulmai's disciples. Naja, Big Khorshid, and Frani were the false sadhu's followers. Baba dictated the general outline and they filled in the plot. Baba was now planning a long journey to Persia, accompanied by some of the men. He came to Nasik on 16 September to see the play and say goodbye to Mehera and the other women, staying only for one day before returning to Bombay to resolve a difficulty about his travel documents. Baba had stopped writing since 1927, and the British were unwilling to issue him a visa for Persia without his signature, even with his thumbprint. Baba therefore declared himself a Persian subject and traveled on a Persian passport. From Persia, Baba returned to Nasik on 16 November, having been gone 2 months. He now wished to stay in Nasik for a while, and since houses were easily available then, one was rented for him. It was called Gias Manzil, and the sidebar says Gias, pronounced Gios, so Gios, pronounced Gios, was perhaps the name of the bungalow's owner. So Gios Manzil, and was a new-looking solid house, large and clean, with a well-kept garden and a private gate. Baba occupied the spacious hall upstairs. Dalit Mai and Gulmai visited him daily and saw to his personal needs. Since Mehera was still quite young at 23, and men were always around Baba, she did not come to this house unless called. The elders, Dalit Mai, Gulmai, and Sunamasi, and Franey, who was married, visited more frequently. Mehera remembered it as being quite a walk near the river, from the pigeon house to Gios Manzil. Once, perhaps at this time, Baba took the women on an outing to Igatpuri, a hill station near Nasik, where they stayed for a few days in a government rest house known as a dak bungalow. They had been, quote unquote, cooped up in the pigeon house during Baba's frequent absences. So it was an enjoyable holiday. 9 women went on the trip, which included Mani, Dolly, and Franey, besides the 6 living in the ashram. Every morning, Baba climbed the nearby hills with the women. Mehera, however, felt afraid while climbing the steeper parts, especially of the sheer drops. So she's not afraid of riding around on a half-ton animal, but she's afraid of heights. She said, "Baba, I can't do it. I'm afraid of heights." Baba held her hand and slowly guided her, telling her not to look down until they had crossed the steepest part. Another day in Igatpuri, when Baba was seated with the women around him for fun, he said, "I've got an idea, something new." He took out a white cigarette from a case belonging to one of the mandali, put it in his mouth and lit it. He took a puff and blew out the smoke. "Now, all of you try one by one. See how it tastes." He handed the cigarette to Mehera first, but she did not know how to inhale. She took a puff, and though she tried not to choke, she started coughing and wheezing. "Give it to the next one," Baba said, laughing. All had the same reaction, choking and coughing on the smoke, and Baba enjoyed their predicament. This was the first and only time Mehera ever tried smoking, but she liked the smell. "If someone is smoking a cigar or cigarette near me, I enjoy the fragrance," she said once. "I love the smell of tobacco, but not when someone chews it." The sidebar says, later, when small Khorshid was staying in Bombay during the new life, she asked Baba if she could smoke, but he said no. Rosalie, are you ready to read? If you are, unmute.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right.
At Gias Manzil, Baba had built, according to his specifications, a cage similar to the one that Upasni Maharaj had used at Sakori. It was constructed of bamboo poles in one corner of the large room on the upper floor. On 9 January 1930, Baba entered into seclusion in this cage, saying that certain work in non-physical realms prompted him to confine himself in a small area. The women visited him only once during the 22 days he remained in the cage. When they arrived, they went upstairs and talked with Baba for about half an hour. They did not go near the cage, but had his darshan from afar, joined hands to him and left. On 30 January, Baba ended his seclusion and visited the women in their quarters before leaving for Ahmednagar. The next day, while at Meherabad, although he had shifted the women and some of the men to Nasik, Baba stated, in the future, Meherabad will be like Jerusalem. For my spiritual work, it is the best possible place. It will always be the center of my work. He returned to Nasik on 1st February. But 4 days later, he went into seclusion again, where he remained until his 36th birthday celebration on 17th February, when he stepped out of this seclusion for good. Lovers came from all over for the celebration, and one invited Baba to visit Kolhaput. He accepted and went, but on the way back, the Mandali's bus nearly slid off a cliff. The near fatal accident was averted when they took Baba's name. Baba observed, travels with me involve great privations. The harassment that I give is greater during my travels. And it is while traveling that my greatest work is done. Before leaving Nasik on 2nd April for Meherabad, Baba instructed the women, along with Rustam, Frani, and their children, to move out of the Brahmin women's house and into Gias Manzil. Frani's family lived upstairs, while Mehera, Khorshid, and Naja stayed downstairs. The entire house was unfurnished, but the women were comfortable in the large bedrooms. The rooms upstairs were equally grand, and there was a broad terrace. And the sidebar says, Padri drove Mani to Nasik on 20th April 1930. From Meherabad, Baba went to Panchgani near Mahabaleshwar, where he had a cave constructed in the side of a hill for his seclusion work, which this time he said had to do with social and political upheavals in India and abroad. On 15th May, Baba entered his seclusion in the Tiger Valley Cave. While Baba was away in Panchgani, Mehera's thoughts were always with him. She mused, how must Baba be feeling to be in seclusion in a cave in the middle of summer? Because local people were flocking to the cave for darshan, and it was raining heavily every night, Baba left on 26 May for Meherabad, where he again sat in seclusion. He was also suffering from a toothache and had several teeth extracted during this period. Adi Sr. drove Mehera, Mani, and Khorshid to Meherabad to see Baba on 28 May. The next day, Freni wrote to Baba, Mehera wants to know if you will apply almond oil to your hair, as she has some with her that she can send, and will be glad if you use it during these hot summer days. In the meantime, Pilamai from Karachi and her 3 children, plus Sunamasi, who had been away in Bombay, had come to stay with the women at Gias Manzil. So the house was full. Daulatmai, Pilamai, and Nacha did the cooking for the women, while Freni's family, who had exclusive use of the dining room, ate separately. The women had been told not to mix with Rustam or any guest who happened to visit the family. Mehera was not particularly close to her sister's children, though she talked and played with her niece, Meru, who was about 3 at the time. Mehera said, I kept a bit aloof from my sister's family. I didn't go into their house because her husband was there. Baba saw that we kept the spiritual atmosphere of Meherabad at Nasik. But they did have guests of their own, such as Baba's sister, Mani, when she had school holidays. At 11, Mani was already an accomplished mimic. One of her antics that Rustam particularly enjoyed was for her to dress in a sadra and sari, like an elderly Irani woman, and imitate the old-fashioned Persian style of singing. Mani dipped in a snuff box for added effect and pretended to take some. Mani's act was so amusing that Rustam made her do it repeatedly for his friends. Though Rustam was fond of music, he could not carry a tune, but he wrote a song about Baba called Meher Raj, Meher's reign. He asked Mani, who was quite musical, to fit a tune to it and sing it before Baba. The sidebar. The song is known today as the Meher Raj Arti. From Gias Manzil, the women could see the river, and unlike at the pigeon house, they sometimes went for a walk there. Baba had also given permission for an occasional outing, and since Nasik is a center of grape cultivation, Rustam took the women in a bus to a nearby vineyard. Baba had not been to Nasik for more than 2 months when he arrived on 12 June for just 1 day, before again journeying to Kashmir. He met with Daulatmai and Freni, and it was perhaps at this time that he told Daulatmai to live with Freni and help with her children. Another daughter, Nergis, Nagu, had been born. Freni had many children by now, all mischievous, said Mehera. As he had done with Gustaji, Baba also gave Daulatmai the order to maintain silence, observe silence, which was never lifted. She continued to do her own shopping using a slate to communicate. When she first began keeping silence, Mani started talking to her, asking what was for lunch that day. By mistake, Dalit Mai said some word like rice. She made that one mistake and then kept absolute silence for the next 22 years until she died in 1952. The sidebar says, Mehru stated that Baba permitted Dalit Mai to break her silence a few days before she dropped her body, but Mehra was unaware of it. Rustam had spoken to Baba about the idea of making a movie to portray spiritual themes and to spread Baba's teachings throughout the world. Baba liked the idea, but instead of making a movie, construction was begun in June on a movie theater, Circle Cinema, that Rustam would own, but that the Mandali would operate. Chanji's brother, now Roji Dadachanji, an engineer from Bombay, was given the contract for the construction of the theater. He began commuting between Bombay and Nasik to supervise the work. And he often brought his wife, Bachamai, and their 3 young daughters, Arnavas, Rhoda, Mistry, and Nargis, whenever they had a holiday. They visited the women mandali and, if Baba was there, had his darshan. Arnavas had seen the women once before at the post office when she was about 8, but has no memory of it. Her first memory of Mehra is during this time at Nasik when she was 12. Arnavas was taken to the women's quarters with her mother and sisters. The first person who greeted them was Mehra. Mehra was dressed very simply. She took us inside their room and showed us a song or poem written by Baba, which she read out and explained. It was something so tender between us. I remember her as something so special, though I had absolutely no idea about her status then. She was so young and beautiful. It is so vivid in my memory, even today. After visiting Kashmir, Baba returned to Nasik via Meherabad on 14th July. Mehra recalled, he was not quite well from his work. We hadn't seen him for a month. He kept to his room, sitting and talking with the men. Mostly Gulmai and Sunamasi would be with him to nurse him. We only went when Baba called us, not much on our own in those days. Wanting a change, Baba left Nasik on 20th August for Calcutta to go sightseeing with Aga Ali. And he also contacted the Jesawala family and their young son, Erich, in Nagpur. Returning to Nasik 6 weeks later, he instructed the women to move back to the Brahmin's house, while Rustam, Frani, and their family were to continue living at Gias Manzil. This time, the women did not occupy the pigeon house, but stayed in the main bungalow that Rustam's family had vacated, the other half of which was still being used by the landlady. The women's portion of the house consisted of 3 rooms, and here too they had no furniture, only a few benches and chairs on the broad veranda. In one of the larger bedrooms at the front, the women slept on mattresses on a carpet. In the morning, their beddings were rolled and stacked in a corner. Bead curtains were hung on the windows to allow the breeze to enter. Enclosing the back veranda with bamboo matting made a storeroom for their luggage. And there was another storeroom near the kitchen, separate from the house. During the next 3 years, the women led a strict and secluded life here, except when going from the house to the kitchen or to the toilet. They were always inside, day and night. Although there was a garden with an expanse of open space in front of their bungalow, they never ventured there because of the main road nearby. Mehera said, "We lived like fakirs at this time. We kept our bedding rolls wrapped up in gunny sacks. We worked in the kitchen all morning. The women also had to cover themselves at all times. This was to test us. Some hardship was imposed so that life with Baba, wouldn't be easy. Baba would test us to do something that was very difficult. To ameliorate the conditions, as with the badminton and cricket games at Meherabad. A ping pong table was brought and kept in the house. Baba told them to play for half an hour each day. Baba had also told Ramju and his family to move into the pigeon house, which gave the women some company. Although the women never saw Ramju, when Baba was away, his wife, Khatija, their baby, Ali, and Khatija's sister, Haja, visited the women in the evenings to talk about Baba or to sing. Haja also helped with the cooking. They had other visitors too, such as Dina Talati, Kak Sahib's wife, Zora Bai, and Shireen Mai, who took one look at little Ali Ramju's bright green eyes and observed, "That child has the eyes of a cat." When Baba returned to Nasik on 1st October, he stayed for only 4 days before leaving again. In fact, during the next 6 months, Meher Baba was traveling constantly, visiting Nasik for only a day at a time every few weeks. Since there was no room for Baba to spend the night at the women's house, he slept at Gia's Manzil with Franey's family. But he had his meals and bathed at the women's bungalow. He usually arrived by 11 a.m. Mehera kept Baba's trunk and belongings ready. When he bathed, she put his towel, soap, and clothes in the bathroom. Downstairs on the veranda, the girls made a seat for him out of a thin mattress on a carpet, since there was no table. He had his meals here also, which Naja cooked with Mehera assisting. The women sat on low stools, their plates balanced on their laps, or sat on the floor. They massaged Baba's feet, and in the afternoon or evening, he returned to Franey's to be with the Mandali. Mehru remembered her mother taking her to the women's bungalow. "I always loved to go see them." Years later, I remembered each of the women's names after having not seen them for some years. When Mehru was small, she once asked Baba when he would speak and then remarked, "You know, Baba, I've never heard you speak." Baba promised he would break his silence soon, and Mehru believed him. A year passed with no breaking of the silence, and again she asked about it. Again, he managed to convince her that the following year he would speak. Baba often played with Franny's children, paying particular attention to Meru. Balu, Meru, and Nagu, who were destined to stay with him in later years. One game played was called Rachel and Jacob. Two players are blindfolded in a circle, and by calling out to Rachel and hearing her response, Jacob tries to catch her. As others in the circle shout directions, round and round the couple circled, fleeing and seeking each other's embrace, while Baba and Mehera watched and clapped encouragement. Sometimes a peculiar looking boy came to Rustam and Franny's house, and Baba revealed that the boy had been a yogi in a previous birth. The boy wore a shirt and langoti, loincloth, and in a pouch at his waist carried non-poisonous snakes that he let loose in their compound. Then he stuck his fingers in his ears, called the snakes back, and returned them to his pouch. Meru, her brothers and sister were mesmerized. Baba instructed Dalatmai and Franny to feed the boy if he wanted anything to eat, but he only ate fruit. Sometimes he asked for money, which Franny knew he did not want for himself, but for the other young boys who demanded it of him so they could rent bicycles. The boy himself was fascinated with mirrors, and as he gazed into one, stuck his fingers in his ears and made strange noises. Wow. Gomai and Franny, here's a photo. Gomai and her daughter-in-law, Franny, in Ahmednagar. Let's hear the strange noises, Eugene.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's see if I turn this sideways, if it'll stay that. Nope, doesn't want to.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful picture with Rustam and Franny and their family. There's Meru at his feet there. And I'm not sure about the boys, who's who. One is Falu, who was like a Mandali, still working.
Look at this little limb.
I don't know which one that is. Tiberam, Franny, Melu, Meru, Falu, Rustam is at the end. That's his Adike's brother, Rustam.
So maybe that little one is Nagu.
Yeah. Wow. He looks a little mischievous, huh? More than a little, maybe.
Whoops. Is Baba styling Western style?
He's in the West somewhere. When in Rome, he just really, look at him.
Marseille.
Oh, yeah.
July 1934.
Yeah, Baba liked Elizabeth Patterson to take his photo because she didn't make him pose. She'd snap it, snap it, snap it. She had some of the greatest pictures. I would imagine this was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, those two pictures that when he got to Pune, I think it was when he got to Pune after walking from Bombay, one where he's really dirty and disheveled and old torn clothes. And then the other one where he, after he's had a bath and he's in a suit and he looks so cross, or you know that
Oh,
one, Rosalie? Yeah.
I think I remember that one. Yeah, yeah. One day, oh, to the west. Shall we end here? Because
Let's
it's
see. Yeah, perfect. So
yeah, to the west. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
chapter 23, page 229 for next week, folks.